I pushed open the double doors of the medical ICU and briefly scanned the room to find the bed number that matched the referral I had received. Before entering her room, however, I quickly flipped through Agnes's file and discovered that she was suffering from various illnesses and had recently been transferred from another hospital for a tracheotomy. While I had heard about tracheotomies before, up until this point in my CPE or clinical pastoral education experience, I had never actually seen one and surely didn't understand the ramifications of having one. I spritzed my hands with Purell and walked into her room to see a very large, uncomfortable woman with tubes and machines and needles sticking out of her from every which way. By this point in my summer internship, it wasn't the machines that distracted me, but rather the trach protruding from her throat that was difficult for me to look past. I introduced myself to her, and she motioned for me to move to the other side of the bed. "How are you?" I asked. "Not good," she replied, merely by mouthing the words, since obviously no sound could come out with her throat in the condition that it was. I realized very quickly that this conversation was going to be completely different than any I had experienced until this point. I considered myself to be a good lip reader, but was so consumed by my anxiety over whether or not I'd be able to understand her that it made it even more difficult to concentrate on her words. I repeated what she mouthed to me. "So you're feeling not good?" "No, sad and lonely." She paused and slowly mouthed her next sentence, in which she described to me that no one had come to visit her since she had arrived. I made sure to repeat everything she was mouthing to me to make sure that I had understood, which I'm sure annoyed her. And then she began a sentence about her husband. She tried to tell me something about him, and for the life of me, I couldn't make out the words. I apologized and asked her to say it again, and once again. She began to get terribly upset with me and mouthed, "What are you, dumb?" I got very flustered, took a breath, and tried to refocus. I brought over a pen and paper and asked her if she could maybe write the word that she was trying to tell me. I saw that she couldn't hold the pen on her own, so I held it with her, but still we couldn't write the word. I called in a few nurses, another chaplain, and ultimately, after many attempts, I figured out what she was trying to say to me, but she had already passed the point of frustration and seemed finished with me. I didn't want to just leave things this way. Although I had always been told, as a general rule, not to merely ask patients yes or no questions, thus providing them with an opportunity to give only one-word answers, after sitting in silence for a few minutes, I realized that this was the one approach that might work with Agnes. "Do you believe in God?" I asked her. "Yes," she nodded. "Do you pray?" "Yes." "Do you pray for strength, help, and understanding from God in this difficult situation?" Tears welled up in her eyes, then she mouthed, "Yes." We paused again, and she said, "I don't know what to say." I asked her if she'd like me to pray for her, and she mouthed that she would. After reciting a prayer, asking God to be with her in her loneliness and to give her patience with those who try to help her, she mouthed amen, squeezed my hand, and smiled. In this week's Parsha, Va'era, God gives Moshe the best and most uplifting message to share with the people of Israel. "Tell the people," God says, "that I will free them from the labor of the Egyptians, deliver them from their bondage, redeem them with an outstretched arm and with great judgments, take them to be my people, and bring them into the land which was sworn to their forefathers." Personally, I can't imagine a more exciting speech to hear, especially from a position of being worn out, tired, and disheartened by my own life as a slave. As soon as God finishes instructing Moshe, it is written, "Vayidaber Moshe ken el bnei Yisrael, velo sham'u el Moshe mikotzer ruach u'me'avodah kasha." And Moshe spoke ken, or thus, to the people of Israel, and they didn't listen to Moshe out of crushed spirits and harsh labor. When the verse says that Moshe spoke ken to the people of Israel, what does it mean that he said? From this one word, we are meant to assume that Moshe spoke the exact same words that God had told him to speak. So much so that the Torah doesn't feel the need to relay any of the words that he used in his version of the information to the people, since they must have been the same. We are seemingly meant to deduce this information as opposed to being told it explicitly. But if Moshe really did use the same exciting and inspiring words that God had used with him, how could it possibly be that these words fell flat on the ears of the Israelites? How could such positive and uplifting words not serve as a source of encouragement for a group of slaves hoping and praying for redemption? I believe that the answer lies in the small word, ken. When Moshe spoke ken to the people of Israel, he spoke the words that God had spoken to him, but perhaps with a different intonation. Let's imagine how the feeling behind a message can get confused when the intonation is changed or unclear. A person accidentally writes an email entirely in caps lock, and the person receiving the email feels that the emailer was yelling. Or perhaps another person emails, and in a place of seeming enthusiasm, neglects to put in an exclamation point, thus rendering the person unexcited about something important. If we consider all of Moshe's potential intonations when relaying God's message to the people, it's likely that that could have been a reason that the people were unable to hear his words. More likely to me, however, is the fact that Moshe did not attempt to meet the people where they were while speaking with them.